Okay, we are live today, 16th of September. This is OSRA Daily Scrum. Oh, right, Greg is here. Let's just do Scrum
Sorry
quick and
guys, I
then
didn't
go
realize
through
the time.
retrospective. Okay, Nikita?
Sure. I've been working on the story linking a sponsor with an orphan, so establishing a sponsorship relationship. The story on Pivotal has 7 tasks, out of which I've done the 3 that were the most basic, basically creating new models. And now I am working on the actual functionality, how to, through the web interface, how to link a sponsor and an orphan. I asked Modisum for the exact details of how the client would like to do that, and it seems that we actually need to clarify that with them before I go too far in the direction that I'm going right now. So I'll continue implementing it for the time being, because I think if I figure out how to do it the way I'm doing it now, it'll be easier to change it later on. So that was a story that I thought I would be able to finish by the end of the previous sprint, but at this point I'm going to carry it over into the next.
Okay. Nikita, can you share your screen so you will drive screen?
Sure.
Yeah, it doesn't work for me. Okay, Motasan?
Yes, I've been working with the client to clarify some of the issues they had earlier, some of the points we need some clarification on. One of them is the sponsorship workflow, and many of the things that were discussed yesterday in the meeting, I've added user stories to the icebox, cover all of them. I have a few questions for the client that I've shared with them, so I'm waiting for their feedback. They're sending me some additional clarifications on some of those stories, so I'm adding them as I get the responses. There is one story that I've started and I have not complete. I mean, I have a PR submitted since maybe a week ago, 8 days ago, yeah, and it has not been merged yet because one of the comments said something about the story, the cucumber stories, that we should do them differently, similar to how Sly was doing his own PR, and that was never merged as well. So there is some kind of a dependency here. So I'm waiting for Sly to see how is he's doing it and see if that's approved. And then based on that, I have to change my cucumber stories to match. So it's kind of on hold for now, that PR. And basically, that's it from me.
Okay. I see. Greg?
Hey.
Hi. Your turn.
Well, I've potentially finished features, but there's an ongoing discussion about whether we don't need to improve them. So that may or may not be finished. It's an ongoing chore. My story is a little bit blocked until Sly's PR gets merged. So my story will carry on into the next sprint. I don't think there's much else to say.
And Sly's PR is hung up because of...
I'm not sure. I think this is... I'm not saying we're doing anything wrong. I want to make that clear. But I think the speed at which we merge PRs needs to be something we need to see if we could improve somehow.
Yeah.
I agree, yes.
It just seems to be, and I don't think it's anyone's fault in particular. It just seems that a question gets asked, and if it's left hanging and not resolved, it just kind of the PR sits there indefinitely, even if people are hanging on it. And maybe it's less of a problem as we mature and we're not. It's not such a bottleneck that these early stories get finished before people can start working on others. I don't know. but it does seem to cause a considerable amount of slowing people down at the moment, I think.
Yeah. So if I recall, the problem with Sly's PR was that he implemented CRUD for. Is that what? Sorry, am I remembering correctly or
No,
no?
that does sound familiar now. You've mentioned it. And the question, I guess, was whether we ship it and don't put it on active admin,
Yeah.
or whether it's taken out.
This is one part of it. The other part is, I think there was some comment saying about the specs themselves of the features.
So there is that, and then there is.
Yeah, there is the whole thing about we don't need a CRUD actually for this. So
Yeah.
You see, I think we will do eventually. I don't think you're going to have an admin permanently at the end of your app. I think as your app matures and they want this feature, it may not be very important and it may be used very rarely and only a very select number of people may be able to use it. But getting things put into the database by one of us going and piping it into PostgreSQL or running a DB seed isn't. I don't know what everyone else's thoughts are, but I don't think it's like a satisfactory long-term.
Yeah, certainly. I don't think that the client should be running back to the developer every time they want to do something trivial.
So the fact that we've got it, if everyone's in agreement, I think is possibly something that we keep, and maybe we just don't show in the active admin interface if it's not required yet.
So we just take it out of from the menu bar.
Yeah, just that's my gut feel. I don't know what other people think.
I guess I don't see any reason not to do that.
I mean, the only reason not to do that would be just to say we don't want code that we don't need in our code base.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that, like, maybe when we start creating roles, so based on the role only, maybe the super user role will have that button available to them on the nav bar.
And I don't know whether this is actually retrospective talk, or you'll have to forgive me, but one question that I have that seems to continually raise its head is, let's use Sly's PR as an example, because I think it probably is quite a good example. He's written his features, and we believe that they may not be good enough, but they're good enough in the sense that they're passing and they're working and they're doing what they need to do to give us confidence in the code. So my question is, if we're not happy with the way the features are written, do we stop the PR in its tracks now, with the thought that maybe no one will ever come back and clean it up, or do we accept the PR and instantly raise another story to refactor and tidy those features up, and maybe even make a policy that that's that person's next story and they can't take on another story until they've completed it, but at least then the PR's merged, the tests are passing, and people have got stuff to work against. I don't know what other people's feelings are on that.
Definitely option number 2.
I think, yes, that's a good point to do, and I think we did this similarly. I remember, if I'm not mistaken, on some of Nikita's stories related to RSpec. We had some discussion, and then we said, okay, accept this PR, merge it, and then created another RSpec story.
Yeah, I think especially since the discussion on Cucumber and high-level tests is not concluded yet, I think we should definitely go ahead and merge the features as they are now, and then at a later date, if it's decided, then we'll refactor everything. But my understanding was that Sly's PR was being held up because of the CRUD issue, not because of the format of the features.
Okay.
So, Nikita, can you create a page for retrospective results so we can discuss and see them right here? Yeah, somewhere here. So, as for Scrum, we finished, I think, and we can go slightly into retrospective. So, what I want to start with, yesterday we had a client meeting and we had some stories accepted. Can we look at the pivotal tracker and see how actual sprint was?
So here we are.
We're in pivotal.
Where to go for Pavel?
The pivotal tracker. The pivotal tracker. Look at the stories. Because
The ones that have been.
yeah, you had this on previous screen. I don't know. Maybe
I didn't
it's
have
even.
anything else.
Yeah, it's here. Oh.
I see the option.
Oh. There are two MotoSams here. Okay. Yes, you have. MotoSam, you using iPad?
I'm switching to my phone now because I have to leave.
Okay. But you shouldn't use speakerphone then. Just use headset or.
I am on the headset.
Yeah?
He's even more handsome when there's two of them.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, interesting thing. Now we are in 12th sprint and we was in the 11th sprint. Can you open previous sprint?
I don't know how to do that, Pavel.
Yeah, I don't know too. Let me look at my pivotal tracker. I think there should be option to choose stories which I was completed.
Yeah, there is usually an option right here at the top of current.
Yeah, there are.
Oh, here we go.
Done. Yeah, done. Okay. So in previous sprint we actually finished 11 points, but it's due to MotoSam stories which were earlier. But anyway, we can try to look at that as the orienter to our new sprint, so we can do that. Okay. Well, I think that it was actually a productive meeting with the client, and it's very good decision to hold them every 2 weeks. So we really need to prepare something to the client. Okay, let's then back to our retrospective page, and the first problem that Craig mentioned, it is about how to call it, delayed PRs or how?
Code reviews being too long, I think is what I would say.
Too long code review. Code reviews. Too long. Now let's go through all problems.
It's not.
Yeah.
I think it's not only just the code review. I mean, like some people will put a comment. The developer will try to address it some way, and then there is no reply to their new work, for example, and then it's got stuck. And maybe after a couple of days, the original commenter does not reply, and the developer does not do it.
Well, yes, but it's process.
Yeah, there is a problem. At the risk of a bad workman always blaming his tools, and GitHub's pretty amazing. But one thing it doesn't do very well is let people know when the diffs that they've commented on have changed. And I think that sometimes causes confusion. I'm not always aware, unless I'm actively looking on Slack, that there's been an update. Or sometimes I think I go back and look at an email that I've received from GitHub, and think I've already commented on it.
So a second problem is notifications from GitHub.
Well, or just my inability to
No,
read properly.
okay, we should write all problems
Okay.
that we have now. It is the first thing that we should do, without discussion how to resolve it, actually, for now, because we just need to mention all problems when we will have a scope for retrospective, and after that we will try to work out what we need to do with them, if we need to.
I think also as we let the pull, each pull request get larger and larger and larger,
Okay.
it makes it more difficult.
Second one, yeah, big pull requests. Too large. Okay. What else?
I don't know.
Well, as I remember, user stories were really large, really big. Remember?
Yeah, actually, yeah, we talked about that we want to start breaking them up.
Yeah, big user stories. Complex. And another problem which related to this is user stories are not independent.
Right, very, very true.
We are not independent. We are not independent.
Yeah.
Because we need to work out independent stories. What else? Beside problems that we had, we also it's a good idea to mention good things that we had, because it is important to sustain them too. So one of the good things which I saw, it is clearly stated user stories in a good format. It's really very important thing, so we easily can understand what this story about. Well-written user stories. But put it into another, I don't know, not table, but a table, or yeah, or just with space between them, so we can understand where was good things, where was bad things. What else?
For me, although the code review is long, the actual feedback that I've been getting has been, really constructive and phenomenal. I think,
Good feedback.
Yeah. Everyone seems to diligently look at what you've taken the trouble to write, and it's nice.
Yeah.
Okay. What else, guys?
I would say that I like the discussions that we're having. We're, in addition to the feedback on the code, so the sort of the nitty-gritty detail we're talking
huge
about.
details. Oh my god! Yeah, Christopher, and you have you wrote the big document. I really thought you copy pasted from somewhere, but when you said that you written it, oh my god!
Well, Craig started it. I blame him for that.
Okay.
But anyway, yeah, I think it's a very good idea that we're talking about these things. We're looking at it from, all kinds of different perspectives, from the bird's eye view down to, through the lens, and thinking about how to move forward, how to improve our workflow and discussions, etc. So I personally think that's a good positive.
Okay. Discussions.
Well, just that.
Okay. Where is Paul McCulloch? I think Paul. Oh, he dropped. Yeah, I think we need somehow to join him to us. Okay, good discussions. What else?
I mean, we did get some stories accepted, and I think that's
yes,
a plus.
we got some stories accepted. Yes, at least we finished with accepted stories. That's good.
Yeah. In fact, all the stories that were showed to the client were accepted. Some just got some follow-up stories, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Stories accepted. Okay. Reviews.
Maybe in the bad category, or let's say less than perfect, I would put something like, my time estimates or my estimates of how much effort I'll be able to give to a story aren't always spot on.
Yeah. Okay.
I think part of the problem there, though, is that, you know, if we were doing this 9 till 5, 5 days a week, and you were failing, you could be quite rightly kicked for it. But um, it is difficult when it's stuff outside of work, and suddenly something comes along, and whether it's work related or not, suddenly you don't necessarily have the time that you thought you were going to have, and I think that is going to always be an issue for us.
Sure. Yeah.
Of course.
I don't know. I personally feel like I can maybe be a bit more realistic about the time that I'm going to have going forward. But yeah,
We
sure.
should think about what should we change if we changed about it, because it's really hard to predict. But anyway,
I think I agree with Nick, and my strategy is going to be to take on a little less and try and do it in the first week of the sprint, and if everything goes swimmingly well, then maybe discuss about taking on additional stories, even if they're from a backlog. I don't know whether that's going to make you. I know you don't like adding to stuff once it's been set in the sprint, but I think that's a better way to go than taking on too much.
Yeah.
And then having to let go of stuff.
And in parallel to that, the discussion we had earlier about having the user stories, most of them are complex. So if we divide them into simpler stories, more manageable. So in a
exactly.
half a day of work divided over maybe 2 or 3 days, depending on the developer's time, a story can be finished. That's better than having one huge story that takes 2 weeks to finish.
Yeah.
definitely. Okay. Well, any other ideas or problems that we had, or we can go to the second part, to the actions that we can do?
Actually, in the bad category, maybe I would add something like Sly came on, and the last, he did some work, and then the last I've heard from him, it seems, was about 8 days ago, according to the pull review. Sam Pretty was around very actively for about a week, and then he practically disappeared. So maybe just to put something like communication. If you're not going to be around for a predictable period of time, let everybody else know.
Especially if you have a story you're working on.
Definitely.
Yeah. If you join into project, you have some commitment to say that when you won't be available, because communication about availability.
Yeah. Maybe related to this, the communication with the client. Maybe this is partly my fault, but for example, some of the points they raised yesterday, for example, the default status, they asked it to be active, while earlier they themselves specifically said they want it to be, for example, under revision. So the client is changing their mind based on what they're seeing.
But
that's adding stories.
Guys, that's the whole idea of Scrum. That after client seen what we did, he said that I thought that it should be something else. That's the whole idea. Actually, it's normal. It's not bad. It's a real practice, real core of our ideas. Yeah.
While we're talking about this, actually, and this is going to sound really devious, but one thing that did occur to me yesterday when we were having this meeting, and there was a discussion of whether they should accept the story and raise an additional story, or not accept the story and just add the features that we're asking for then and there. That actually affects our velocity, doesn't it?
It affects velocity, but it doesn't matter because
well, no, but it does. It does if we're trying to gain the whole point of velocity isn't necessarily to get the biggest velocity, but it's to try and get a picture of what our velocity is.
Something consistent.
Yeah,
Yes,
and I think there's a danger if you don't accept that feature, and then or your additional task becomes a chore with no velocity. That's fine if it's an error or a oversight on our part, but we want to be careful about doing that if it's not, because it starts to give us false metrics.
yes, that's true. That's why we entice them to accept.
Yeah.
Pavel, correct me if I'm wrong. If the story, especially if the story is written with client's participation, or if the client approves the story after it's written, and we deliver everything that is requested in that story, then should we refuse to add something to it? Should we say that we insist on it being a new story then, if we did everything that they asked for?
Well, yes, I think yes. We shouldn't insist like very hard, you know. But,
Sure, no, I don't mean that we...
yes, but it's the
A
whole
gentle
idea that
nudge.
acceptance criteria. Acceptance criteria is written by the client, and that's what he wants to see. And if we deliver all that things, he should accept it. That's normal. Of course, there may be some discussion about it, but we should find some ways to handle it. You know, I think that last meeting was actually a regular meeting, what is in real world happening, and it was the same situation normally. We create new stories, we accepted all stories, and that's it. With some clients, maybe harder clients, maybe he couldn't accept some of the stories. I don't know, but all went well. So.
Yeah, and they're very reasonable people. So I think a lot of these teething problems that we're talking about are just teething problems and becoming familiar with the process rather than...
Yeah, it's just because we haven't met with them before, and this is our first sprint, and we spend a lot of time to deliver something. I hope that we will get some pace in it. It will be better from sprint to sprint. Yeah. Okay, anything else?
And for this point, I'm just now, after I added the stories, for example, today I asked the client, I sent them the links to the new stories, and I asked them to review them to see, for example, if so this is maybe related to the acceptance criteria being reviewed by the client. Or,
Yeah, I think that's an excellent idea to give them access to pivotal record.
Yes.
Has he reviewed it?
That was just like a couple of hours ago.
Oh, okay.
So maybe he'll do it tonight or tomorrow.
Okay, I see. Well, then let's go to second part. Let's look how to keep good things and how to get rid of bad things. And let's discuss on ideas. For now, just an ideas what we can do. After that, we will discuss actions, which will be part of ideas which we can make strategies. So, code reviews is too long. Well, first of all, I think we need to establish some metrics for how long code may be in pull request, right? What do you think?
Yes, I think we need some policy. I mean, as long as there is progress being done, I don't think it's the time limit is the issue. But the issue is if it's just being held there without any real progress happening. That's
what do you mean by progress?
No, I mean, like if there is a comment on some code review, and then the developer is working on that, then they modify, then they get other feedback.
Yeah.
So that's progress.
I mean that, for example, if no comments in one day, we should raise priority to issue higher and I don't know, send message to developers. I don't know, or every developer, something like that. You know.
That's a good idea. I think also, as Nick said earlier, you know, some people have disappeared without saying that they're not going to be around, and so there's this automatic assumption that other people are going to come along and review code, and you're just not sure when that's going to happen.
Yes, so we think maybe part of the policy is to specify who is responsible for, is the developer who submitted the PR responsible for following up with people and asking them, and then making sure that their code is accepted, or is it the project manager, or something like this, assigning accountability and responsibility for
Actually,
team member.
I had a question that's related to all of this ultimately. So I know that on GitHub I now am authorized to merge commits.
Yes.
Craig, are you as well?
Yes, I am.
I think so. Some pretty as well.
Yeah. So what about the idea of assigning a responsible person with merge authority as soon as a PR is created? We try to take turns so that, I don't know.
For now, it was only Motasen.
Well, there was nothing official. I merged one commit.
Sampriti's been merging a couple as well, hasn't he?
Yeah, he's done that. I was about to merge your commit earlier today, Craig, the one with a typo fixed. But then I wanted to ask, am I stepping on any toes? Am I breaking any procedure here if I do that, or would it be okay for me to do it?
Well, I can suggest that you can merge, but not your development. So everyone.
Yeah, of course.
So, like every of developers, because we have actually quite senior developers here. Every developer can merge code of other developer, but not his own.
Well, what about a situation where it's up until now we've been waiting for feedback on 3 developers, haven't we? Nick, myself, and if it's Motasen's pull request, for example, Nick, myself, and Sampriti, whichever person does the pull request, the other 3 of should we say that we only need feedback of 2 developers, and when we've got that, someone can merge the request?
I feel like in the case of, and again, this is not criticizing somebody for disappearing. I understand that people have a life outside of OSRA.
It's not knowing.
But yeah, it's the not knowing. So, we can't say that at least 2 developers or at least 3 developers have to look at something before it gets merged in, and also if if somebody comes back and sees that something's been merged and they have a strong issue with it, they can create a chore and basically fix it up themselves then.
But that's kind of dynamic. Like now we're saying 2 or 3. Maybe later the team will grow. Maybe it will shrink.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is. But I think part of the problem is because we're such a small team and we're not wanting to make anyone feel like their opinions don't matter. We've kind of been waiting for consensus from everyone, but as we're trying to move forward at speed, I think it's causing bottlenecks.
Okay.
And again, back to Nikki's point about maybe taking turns into or assigning responsible people per PR. Even getting to the opinion of these 2 developers, for example, that they need. So who is going to follow up with 2 or 3 developers just to get their consensus, for example, or?
Well, we do not need to have consensus, right?
I think.
No, 2 out of 3, for example, or.
Yeah, I think if we have a pull request and everyone jumps on, that's fine. But if only 2 people respond to it and then it goes quiet, and a developer hasn't heard from anybody in 24 hours, all they need to do is post a message in Slack saying, guys, this has been 24 hours now, and then we can make a quick decision on it. Between any 2 developers that are around. Are we happy?
Yeah, so this is what so we say that the developer is the one who will follow up to make sure that the decision is made.
Yeah, so the question is the same that I asked before. Is this the responsibility of the person who submitted the pull request, or do we assign an independent developer to take on that responsibility?
Well,
Mm.
to ask the question another way, do we all feel like our team's cohesive enough to make that decision based on its merits? And you know, if it's occasionally wrong, it's probably not the end of the world and something we can back out of. You know, if
I
it's
think we're doing fine so far.
if it's something like a typo, you know,
Yeah.
does it even need two developers to look at? If it's a big
Oh, sure, yeah.
feature like slides, then you know maybe we want everyone to have a quick look at it, and then if that third person hasn't looked at it within 24 hours and we haven't got any response from them on Slack, then we make a decision that between the two of us we're happy with it, and if it's an issue at a later date, we can add further stories or try to fix whatever problems.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to do it.
I mean, I think we know when it's right, don't we? When we're merging, it's a bit like merging your own story. You know when it's right, don't you? And you know when it feels wrong a little bit, I guess. No, you don't seem to show it.
I mean, it depends on talking from my personal experience. Some of the things that I'm not very experienced with, for example, the way I started doing my cucumber stories, for example. My opinion there, even though I'm convinced of one way or the other, I can't honestly say, for example, that this is the way that it should go, or this is what should be merged or approved or not. So I wait for somebody else's opinion, somebody who's more experienced in that particular area.
That's not stopped me, Motterson.
Well, guys, as I understand, we will wait for response from other developers at least 24 hours. When we raise priority and we still wait for response. Without any response, of course, we are not merging. When we want to merge, when that merging can do only developer who doesn't created that. So at least two developers in this case will be on that issue, on that story. And two developers is quite enough. Of course, the developer who merge, if he understands nothing about Cucumber, for example, he shouldn't merge Cucumber. It's a better idea if he understands nothing about what it did, right?
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah.
It's just when his responsibility to ask someone else to do that, and that's it. We shouldn't create multi-levels agreements about what and how to do. It's just common sense. If you really know that you know about it and you are the second developer, just merge and that's it. If you think that you should take some advice, well, just do that. And after all, even if you do wrong thing, that it's not the end of the world, right? We can cope with it. Yeah, we just need to create better speed than we have now, and this is the main goal. Without losing, in quality, of course, but for now we can.
Yeah, this makes sense. And
okay, so I don't even know if we need to write down anything here. I think we're doing okay. We just basically we give ourselves permission to not wait for any more people than basically as soon as we feel comfortable that everything's okay. Even though somebody might later come in and have strong opinions about it. If everything seems to be working, we merge it in, and if somebody wants to fix it up afterwards, they're welcome to do so.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, buy into that.
Okay.
Okay.
And the point about the 24 hours and the developer reminding everybody again, so that's part of it, the process.
Yeah.
I think also because we're aware of that, as new people on board, we can tell them, if you've put a pull request in as we're reviewing code and you've not heard anything in 24 hours, post a message on Slack because we need to get our skates on, and they'll just become aware of the process.
Exactly. I hope we can automate posting a message in Slack. I don't know,
Yeah,
No,
but
yeah,
ideally,
absolutely, yeah.
I hope you can. Okay, next question. Pull requests too large. Why?
pull request or story to learn?
Both.
Pull requests.
Oh.
No, now we're discussing pull requests. If it's connected completely to the stories, then we should discuss why the story is too large. But if pull requests may be large, not connected to the story, then it's other question.
I think they're potentially connected. We can also separate them because a big story can have multiple pull requests, right?
Yes.
So it's up to the developer working on a story to decide, when to submit a pull request for partial functionality.
What do we consider as large pull requests? Do we have, I don't know, metrics or ideas, just big ideas?
I felt that Sly's CRUD implementation, although very good, was too long as a pull request. And I don't know whether I would break that up into, say, a model, and passing specs for the model, and then other bits that could be created into discrete functionality, or whether that's just, or whether we accept that for CRUD type stories where we're introducing a model, it's going to be a big pull request. What are people's thoughts on that?
But we need.
I think separating them into two PRs makes more sense. Like one PR just create the model, and then another PR for the controller, and maybe.
Yeah, I think, especially with active admin, it seems to make a lot of sense that the model is implemented directly through Rails, and there are model methods and model specs that go with it. And the next step is the feature for the view, which is implemented through active admin, and it can be almost completely separate from the creation of the model itself.
I agree, and that is also my opinion. But playing devil's advocate,
please,
from an agile point of view, it kind of breaks the cycle of write your feature, then drill down and do the model and the tests, and then come back to the feature. As I say, I don't necessarily agree with that, but it's just the devil's advocate.
Yeah, it's a fair point, I think, right? Because I suppose, you might not know all of the model's methods until you go through, the feature of what it needs to do.
Guys, do we have an experience? What about website 1 pull requests? We had the same problem. I have no ideas, but we can ask.
The last time I was there, what they said is that they wanted to completely separate UI from the implementation. So
and then they went back on that, didn't they, Nick?
Have they? I must have left before that happened.
Okay. But I don't know. They were talking about, again, it was just hearsay. So they were talking about cancelling the idea. I don't know what the outcome was. But they're quite JavaScript heavy on that site anyway, aren't they?
True.
I think for ourselves it would be easier to split.
Yeah. Plus, I think for them UI meant a lot of CSS. For us, that is pretty much non-existent. So it's not a matter of style; it's something else.
Different.
Looking at Sly's pull request here, I don't think that it's exceptionally large. So unless his model got significantly more complicated with extra methods, I don't have a strong problem with something that has this much code.
But if it was much bigger, would you start to have problems?
If it was much bigger, if the model was, like I said, if there were model methods, then definitely. I think at this point, because this model, the organization's model, is such a straightforward thing, there's basically just a couple of validations, and that's it. And then all the view does is just cycle through the fields and make sure that the standard CRUD works. Like I'm okay with a PR of this size.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I think when we do not have that big problem with PRs, but with the big stories. If we can split stories into smaller stories, we won't receive that big PRs, right?
Yes, see how that goes. That's a good way to attack it. If we're still having problems, we can adjust, can't we?
Yeah. Okay, then let's just, yeah. No, that break up stories into several PRs, we don't accept as an idea. Yeah, just, yeah.
There is one more thing, like it's not like a common thing that I faced here, but sometimes, for example, while developing a PR, the developer will notice something wrong, for example, in another part of the code, maybe a related file, and then go on trying to fix that, including in the same PR. So that will make the PR a bit bigger. So maybe we have a policy saying a PR is only for a specific task in a story or for a story
Well, you
on
said
its own.
very strange thing for me. Even I had small experience in development, but it's very strange. If someone broke something, he shouldn't go and fix that something there. He should change his code, not to broke
No.
it.
I'm not saying about broke. Like, for example, try writing some, for example, a model that's there is a relationship with another model, and then they found that the original model that was implemented differently, or that missing an attribute, for example. So they go and fix that original model in the same PR, while it should have been done differently, where they put a story for specifically for that, and then fix that on a separate PR, and then use their code.
Yeah, if they're unable to fix it themselves, they should create an issue on GitHub or a story in Pivotal. But yeah, definitely doing something that's outside of the domain of the current story, that shouldn't happen.
Yeah.
Craig?
Agreed. I'm just thinking, I may have crossed that line myself, but I'm not sure whether I have or not. When I was doing features, we were coming across parts of the interface that weren't doing what we wanted the features to do, but I guess that's part of the story. I amended the interface to match the features after getting agreement that that was what we wanted from the features, but
Yeah, I think we should create chores. I don't know, new stories,
Okay.
chores, because it can go in a very unpredictable way when we start to change code that already was accepted. You know.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well,
It's part of the story.
I hope this is clear like that.
Okay. Stories too big and complex. Well, just let's try to divide them.
Yep.
That's what we can do. Stories are not independent. Well, do we have any ideas how to make them independent?
I think some of that will come as we start breaking stories up into smaller pieces. Because, for example, if, well, to take Craig's story with the code, how can I look at that? Yeah, the sponsor ID here. So it depends on Sly's PR because we need the
branches. Yeah.
If Sly simply created the branch model with appropriate tests and pushed that out as a pull request, and then worked on the features or the views or whatever else needs to be done, then Craig could immediately start working on his story and hook into the model that's already implemented. So even something as simple as that, where if I'm thinking of my story right now that I'm working on here. I needed to implement 3 different models and I'm really thinking that that's the point at which I create a pull request. The 3 models are in place. They don't really do very much yet, but they're there. So if anybody wants to talk about the fact that a sponsor has a sponsorship, they can actually do that now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And I have a feeling that these dependencies will be less as we go forward, because now we're just starting, so we're missing all of the models, so all the models are dependent on each other. But going forward, the stories will become maybe less isolated.
Okay, we'll see. So for now,
Just with smaller stories, I think.
smaller stories, okay, but it's like okay. Okay, let's go for
and they don't necessarily even need to be split up. I mean, when you showed us how to do tasks, I mean, you could split that story up into a group of tasks and make each task a pull request.
Mm-hmm. So that dependency will be on a specific task that will be usually done faster than the full story. Then the other developer can go on and work on their own.
Yeah.
But I don't know if this is what Pavel was being hesitant about, but of course there still needs to be some logic to the order in which the stories are being implemented. Because if a tiny story, sits somewhere in the backlog, but it still has the potential to hold up a lot of other stuff.
We can we have priority of tasks actually in Pivotal Tracker. It's just the order of appearance. And if we strongly think that one story is very important to others, we can move it to a top, and we should finish it earlier. It's an idea how we can look at that stories, For now, I'm absolutely sure that we have no ideas how order of these stories are now, right?
I think right now, just following the logical way the developer is planning to carry on their work for that story. So they just divide the task and list them sequentially.
Yes, but if you move task to the top, the task will have more priority, and in backlog the same situation. In current sprint, for example, we can move task with bigger priority, and that task should be done, and we should work together on that tasks unless it would be done. Something like that. I don't know. Just as an idea how to make sure that this story is important. Okay, let's go further.
We're only going to know this going forward as well, but if we're finding this 1, 2, and 3 measurement of the magnitude of the story, and a 3 is like way too long, then maybe we do need to split them up and then use that 1, 2, 3 on smaller stories, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's a good idea to actually to count 3 as a not that big story what we thought. Yeah. Okay, next problem, misestimate of time and effort. Do you have any ideas how to get rid of it?
Experience.
That's true, just experience, okay. Communication about availability, where it should be, we should state it somewhere, or I don't know, like, because for example, Sempriti, Sly, or other participants, they do not participate in our meeting now, and how we will know what we should do.
Slack seems to be like the only place.
Yeah, it's not difficult. I mean, as soon as Nick had the problem with his story, he came straight onto Slack and said, "I've got a problem with the story, and I'm going to have to give it up."
Okay.
It's not. I don't think it's difficult letting people know you're not available.
Okay, use Slack. That's right. Okay, any other ideas to resolve that? to sustain good things, well-written user stories. Well, I hope. What the same? Are new
Yes.
user stories written in the same way as the previous ones?
Yes, I was hoping that the new ones are a little bit clearer even, but I mean you guys will look at them and see.
Okay, we'll see it. Okay, let's go for Nikita. Please return to the table. Okay, good feedback on PRs. Well, I hope we will sustain that. Discussions. Actually, why Christopher didn't participate in our scrums and in our retrospective meeting, for example?
He hasn't. I think he's busy with website 1. He hasn't really written any code for OSRA. Is that correct?
I don't know.
I don't think he submitted any PRs.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe not a full PR, yeah, but he participated in some of the discussions earlier on Slack and I think on GitHub as well.
Okay. Yeah, so he's keeping an eye on things, but he hasn't become actively involved yet.
Okay. Well, okay. When let's make strategies into action. So what should we do? First, can we really automate that raise priority and notify team, or is it hard? We don't know.
Automate the.
If one day without activity on pull request, it is posted in Slack.
I'm not aware of anything like that GitHub can do automatically.
I don't think we need to. I think part of the problem was how unsure we were and how we didn't want to really step on other people's toes. I think as we're becoming more comfortable as a team, I think it'll resolve itself.
Okay. So for now, just raise an issue by hands, right?
Yeah.
Okay, no problem. Okay. Okay, for authority to merge others' code, we discuss it. Break up user stories, we will try. No fixing existing code and part of new story. Okay, we should accept on that. Reducing dependencies with smaller story.
I only have a question maybe about the story prioritization. If we, this would be is this what a grooming meeting is supposed to be for, where we go through the icebox?
Yes. Planning grooming, yes.
Planning grooming. Okay. So yeah, it would be, I think it would be very beneficial to do that, so that. But this is something that I think it would take a long time for us to do live in a meeting, to go through everything and to try to figure out what dependencies all these stories have.
Definitely, but you shouldn't do that. Like when you create in a sprint, when you choose the stories, you understand on which story it's dependent, right?
Right.
And you just do that. You shouldn't go through all icebox and prioritize all of them. You just go to the top, I don't know, 5-10 stories or chores and discuss them.
Okay.
Yeah, it's normal. Okay, for retrospective, then that's it. Do we have energy for planning? Fast.
Fast.
I hope. I don't know. Really, I do not have enough time too, but we just.
Well, mine's really easy because I've said I'm not going to commit to anything commit list this week, so mine's to finish off the one that I already have in current.
Yeah, actually, we can see that Pivotal Tracker decided for us what should be done in the new sprint, based on, I don't know, but I think maybe it's
but
not.
We have to have the points for the new stories.
Yeah, that's
that,
a good point.
So, I was thinking, like, for example, now I've created maybe 15 stories. So maybe it makes more sense to vote on a few of them each day instead of having everything. So maybe in the regular Agile Venture Scrums or our Scrum, we pick the top 3 and vote on them, even if we are not planning on working on them right now.
Yes, that's okay. I just have. We need to look at the current sprint and to see if we really if we need more stories into that sprint or that's it, because we have now next 2 weeks, and after finishing these 2 weeks we will oh my god, I forget the word. Like we will deliver all these stories, but we won't deliver the stories from Icebox now, which was raised by the client. I don't know is as important or not important. So let's go just quickly through the current sprint, if we really can do that sprint in 2 weeks or not. If not, well, there is no question to discuss what should we remove from current sprint. If we can and can do more, then we can go to some stories and vote on them. But for now, let's just look at the stories. For example, with orphan detail.
Yes, this is one of the PRs that has been waiting for the past maybe 6-7 days.
Okay.
So
why can't we finish it?
There were some comments that we need to change the way we do the features.
Ship it.
So that's based on Sly's work. So now with the new discussions we're having today, maybe we can just
ship it and raise a chore.
Yeah. Maybe we can have a final round of review today or something, and then by tomorrow we'll know for sure, and then we merge it.
Modus and I agree with Craig. We just merge it. The only thing you need to do is to rebase and push another commit.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
I mean, talking about Cucumber, I think one of the things that I've learned a lot this week is that we're all finding our feet on Cucumber, and part of these discussions that we've been having are to make them continually better. So there's always going to be room for improvement. I think this is going to be an ongoing thing, don't you?
Yeah, and depending on the direction or depending on the outcome of that discussion, all the features might have to undergo a pretty drastic refactoring anyway. So yeah, I agree with Craig. Yeah, so Modusum, if you can rebase and push, then we'll just go ahead and merge.
I can do this later today, yes.
Okay, let's go further. What do we have else?
Sorry, I need to go here.
Yeah, sorry about that.
That's all right.
Not working. Okay, start using Cucumber and Capybara. Craig, what you said?
That's not for me to decide, but
I remember these stories. Every Scrum we discuss with you only just to click finish.
I think it's finished. I think we're at the stage now where, I mean, Cucumber's never ever going to be finished. But as far as this story goes, if people are in agreement, I think that we're now at the stage where we need to be writing Cucumber as we go.
Well, just finish it, Craig.
Yeah, okay.
And Craig, this task is done too, the sponsor feature?
Did that get merged? Is that one that's...
Yeah, I thought it must have been. Because there's no outstanding PR with...
Pavel, you're going to have to kick me in the pants again.
Let's look at the closed. Implement sponsor feature and add additional scenarios. So that's the sponsor feature, right?
Yeah. Done. Finish.
Okay. Excellent.
Okay, let's...
Add an orphan list.
This is being worked on by Sampriti, and he mentioned last time like he's doing something with the remember the issue with where do you store it in the database or on S3? And he said he would start with storing it in the database for now, and then I came back from the meeting with the client saying they're okay with S3. So right now there is no PR, but I know Sampiti has done some work on his local repository on this. So I'm not sure what the status is.
But anyway, it's what Sampriti should finish, and I hope in this sprint he will finish it. Okay.
Yes.
Let's use new data validator in orphan model.
I think I cannot see the screen, but I think this was done already.
Yeah, I think this is done. So yeah, he refactored the date validator and this would be orphan validation. I think that's the one. Yeah. So,
okay, so it's done.
It's done.
Okay, great.
OSRA branches.
OSRA branches. It finished. What else?
This is the. Oh no, slice is the organizations, right? Yeah. So.
Yeah, slice is organizations.
I thought this is finished as well. Right? Has it been merged?
Yeah, OSRA branches. Yeah, right there.
But why we haven't show this to a client? Because it's a feature. Motos, and why we didn't show it to a client?
OSRA branches do not have a CRUD, and the only way they can see them is if we add the generate sponsor ID story, where they will have them in the drop-down list of the view. So that we did not get to. So I mean, the release that the client saw included branches in the DB, but there is nothing to show them for that.
Okay, then click deliver if we finished. Just finish it, that's it. Yeah. Okay, next one. Sponsorship start date and partnership start date haven't been renamed in some files.
You finished that, right, Modusum? I'm pretty sure I merged those.
Yeah, I think there was like yes, a very small PR.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's delivered. And yeah, then there is slice organizations.
As I understand, we decide to merge it, right?
Guys, is that the vote? We merge in slice organizations, and then what we need to take the button out of the menu so that the CRUD is not available.
Yeah, I would raise that as a chore.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not even important.
A chore for removing the navbar button.
Yeah.
For organizations. So the only... Oh yeah, there's a comment here from you, Craig, that there is no test for adding your organization, but I guess that's not relevant at this point.
If we're not having the CRUD.
If we're not having the CRUD, it's not relevant. If we were, then I still think it is.
Yeah, so it's kind of... I don't like it because it's neither here nor there. Basically, it has tests for most of the functionality that we don't need, but not for all of it. So basically, if we, well, okay, let's.
No, you're right. You're right. Let's back up a bit before we do something too rash.
So, what should we do with this story? We may not decide right now. Just put it.
Yeah, let's discuss it tomorrow if we've not made a decision by then. But what we might do is fork his code if he's not come back and decide what we're going to do
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Next one, big one story, linked sponsor with an orphan.
Right. So, like I said, there are 7 tasks here, and I've created these 3 models.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what I'll do is I'll submit a PR just with the models.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'm working on right now is the actual creating a view where the link between the sponsor and orphan is made. But after talking to Modusum earlier today, it sounds like we need to clear with the client exactly how they want this to happen.
Mm-hmm. So it seems
Yes.
like this story will take the whole sprint for you.
There might be some waiting there, I suppose. If I knew exactly what I needed to do, I think I should be able to finish it in a week.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. Understand. Next story.
Next story is Craig's sponsor ID. Sponsor OSRA ID, and that's waiting on organizations.
Sly.
So waiting on Sly's PR.
Okay. And what else?
And the final thing is import orphans from an orphan list.
Yes, this is, yeah, I mean, once we have some previous PR in place, so we just need to take that file that he saved and write an importer that will extract this and fill the orphan details.
But this story is very big, actually, import orphans. So, as I understand correctly, Nikita already have big tasks what to do. It will be your story, right, Motos?
Yeah, exactly. Like that's what when Sampriti took that one, I asked him to start with the upload part, and then because I've never done something similar, and then the Excel parsing I did something earlier, so I can take that.
Okay. Well, guys, what I actually see that we have enough tasks for the sprint. Maybe we could take more, but for now, if everyone have what to do, it's better to do this plan, and after that decide can we take more stories into the sprint or not. But this sprint should be our commitment. We should do that until the Thursday of next week, and if we could do more, well, that's great. But we shouldn't we should make a plan, and this is maybe our plan, and our priority is to finish this plan. So we should first that organization's topic, as I understand, we should move to the top, because it is a story from which others dependent, right?
Yes.
Yes. So
Yes.
we need to not only just to develop, but we need to decide what to do with organizations. And that's our priority. After that, we will work on next stories. So, from my point of view, it's enough to the sprint. Your opinion, guys?
I agree. Let's be conservative for this one, and like you say, if it turns out to be better than we expected, then fantastic.
So, is it possible for us to add stories, for example, a week down the road within this sprint, if everybody is done?
Yes. If everybody is done, it's completely acceptable to take new stories. What I want to prevent is when, for example, you have problems with organizations and you think that you don't want to decide that problem. You think that I will better take other story, and you take other story, and you didn't finish organizations. That's a bad idea. But if we finish all our stories and we need just new work to do, it's very good to take stories. No problem with that.
Okay, then I think that's better.
Okay. Well, guys, then that's it for planning, as I see it now. Any other suggestions, ideas?
I think I'm okay with everything so far.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, then everyone have a great evening, and tomorrow see you on Scrum.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, Pavel.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.